Before we get started, just a reminder to check out the Charles Perrault version of Cinderella if you haven't had a chance yet. And of course, be on the lookout for a follow-up video discussion of the two versions of Cinderella, as well as Cinderella in pop culture in general. This is Aschenputtal by the Brothers Grimm. There was a rich man whose wife lay sick, and when she felt her end drawing near, she called to her only daughter to come to her bed and said, "Dear child, be pious and good, and God will always take care of you, and I will look down upon you from heaven and will be with you." And then she closed her eyes and passed away. The maiden went every day to her mother's grave and wept and was always pious and good. The snow covered the grave with a white handkerchief, and when the sun took it off again, the man took to himself another wife. The new wife brought 2 daughters with her, and they were beautiful and fair in their faces, but at heart they were evil-minded and ugly. And then began very bad times for the poor stepdaughter. "Is the stupid creature to sit in the same rooms with us?" cried her sisters. "Those who eat bread must earn it. Out with a kitchen maid." They took away her pretty dresses and put on her an old gray smock and laughed at her and sent her to the kitchen. There she was obliged to do heavy work, get up before the morning, draw water, make the fires, cook and wash. Besides all this, the sisters did their utmost to torment her, mocking her and strewing peas and lentils among the ashes and setting her to pick them up. In the evenings, when she was quite tired out with her hard day's work, she had no bed to lie on, but was obliged to rest next to the hearth among the ashes. And as she was always dusty and dirty, they named her Aschenputtal. It happened one day that the father wanted to journey to the fair, and he asked his 2 stepdaughters what he should bring back for them. "Fine clothes," said one. "Pearls and jewels," said the other. "But what will you have, Aschenputtal?" he asked. "Father, the first twig that strikes against your hat on the way home. That is what you should bring me," she answered. So he bought for the 2 stepdaughters fine clothes, pearls, and jewels, and on his way back, as he rode through a green lane, a hazel twig struck against his hat, and he broke it off and carried it home with him. And when he reached home, he gave to the stepdaughters what they had wished for, and to Aschenputtal he gave the hazel twig. She thanked him and went to her mother's grave and planted the twig there, weeping so bitterly that her tears fell upon it and watered it, and it flourished and became a fine tree. Aschenputtal went to see it 3 times a day and wept and prayed, and each time a bird came to the tree and brought her whatever she wished for. Now it came to pass that the king ordained a feast that should last for 3 days, so that the king's son might choose a bride. When the 2 stepdaughters heard that they were bidden to appear, they felt very pleased, and they called Aschenputtal and said, "Comb our hair, brush our shoes, and make our buckles fast. We are going to the feast at the king's castle." Aschenputtal did as she was told, but cried, for she too would have liked to go to the feast, and she begged her stepmother to allow her to join her stepsisters. "What, you, Aschenputtal?" she exclaimed. "You have no dress and no shoes, you who cannot dance? You want to go to the feast?" But as she persisted in asking, at last the stepmother said, "I have strewn a dish full of lentils in the ashes, and if you can pick them all up again in 2 hours, you shall go with us." Then the maiden went to the back door that led into the garden and called out, "O gentle doves, O turtle doves, and all the birds that be, the lentils that in ashes lie, come and pick up for me. The good must be put in the dish, the bad you may eat if you wish." Then there came to the kitchen window 2 white doves, and after them the turtle doves, and at last a crowd of all the birds under heaven, chirping and fluttering, and they alighted among the ashes. The doves nodded with their heads and began to pick, peck, and then all the others began to pick, peck, and put all the good greens into the dish. Before an hour was over, all was done, and they flew away. Then the maiden brought the dish to her stepmother, feeling joyful and thinking that now she should go to the feast. But the stepmother said, "No, Aschenputtal, you have no clothes, and you do not know how to dance, and you are not allowed to come with us." And when Aschenputtal cried, she added, "If you can pick 2 dishes full of lentils out of the ashes, nice and clean, you shall go with us," thinking to herself, for that's not possible. Now she strewed 2 dishes full of lentils among the ashes, and the maiden went through the back door into the garden and cried, "O gentle doves, O turtle doves, and all the birds that be, the lentils that in ashes lie, come and pick up for me. The good must be put in the dish, the bad you may eat if you wish." So there came to the kitchen window 2 white doves, and then the turtle doves, and at last a crowd of all the other birds under heaven, chirping and fluttering, and they alighted among the ashes. The doves nodded with their heads and began to pick-peck, pick-peck, and then all the others began to pick-peck, pick-peck, and put all the good grains into the dishes. And before half an hour was over, it was all done, and they flew away. Then the maiden took the dishes to the stepmother, feeling joyful and thinking that now she should go with them to the feast. But she said, "All this is no good to you. You cannot come with us, for you have no clothes and cannot dance. We would have to be ashamed of you." Then she set out with her 2 proud daughters. And as there was no one left in the house, Aschenputtal went to her mother's grave, sat under the hazel tree, and cried, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." Then the bird threw down a dress of gold and silver and a pair of slippers embroidered with silk and silver, and she put on the dress and went to the festival. But her stepmother and sisters did not know her and thought she must be a foreign princess, she looked so beautiful in her rich dress. Of Aschenputtal they never thought at all, and supposed that she was sitting at home in the ashes. The king's son came to meet her and took her by the hand and danced with her. He refused to stand with anyone else, so that he did not let go of her hand, and when anyone came to request it, he answered, "She is my partner." And when the evening came, she wanted to go home, but the prince said he would go and accompany her, for he wanted to see who the beautiful maiden belonged to. But she escaped him on the way and jumped up into the pigeon house. Then the prince waited until her father came and told him the strange maiden had jumped into the pigeon house. The father thought to himself, "Could it be Aschenputtal?" And he called for axes and hatchets and had the pigeon house cut down, but there was no one in it. And when they entered the house, there sat Aschenputtal in her dirty clothes among the ashes, with the little oil lamp burning dimly in the chimney. For Aschenputtal had jumped quickly out of the pigeon house again and gone to the hazel tree. There she had taken off her beautiful dress and laid it on the grave, and the bird had carried it away again. And then she had put on her little gray smock again and sat down in the kitchen among the ashes. The next day, when the festival began anew, and the parents and stepsisters had gone to it, Aschenputtal went to the hazel tree and cried, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." Then the bird cast down a still more splendid dress than the day before, and when she appeared in it among the guests, everyone was astonished at her beauty. The prince had been waiting until she came, and he took her hand and danced only with her. And when anyone else came to invite her, he said, "She is my partner." And when the evening came, she wanted to go home, and the prince followed her, for he wanted to see which house she went to. But she escaped from him and ran into the garden at the back of the house. There stood a fine large tree bearing splendid pears. She leaped as lightly as a squirrel among the branches, and the prince did not know what had become of her. So he waited until her father came, and then he told him that the strange maiden had rushed from him, and that he thought she had gone up into the pear tree. The father thought to himself, "Could it be Aschenputtal?" And he called for an axe and felled the tree, but there was no one in it. And when they went into the kitchen, there sat Aschenputtal among the ashes as usual, for she had got down the other side of the tree, and had taken back her beautiful clothes to the bird on the hazel tree, and had put on her old gray smock again. On the 3rd day of the feast, when the parents and the stepdaughters had set off, Aschenputtal went again to her mother's grave and said to the tree, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." Then the bird cast down a dress, the like of which had never been seen for splendor, and slippers that were of pure gold. And when she appeared at the feast, nobody knew what to say for wonderment. The prince danced only with her, and if anyone else invited her, he answered, "She is my partner." And when evening came, Aschenputtal wanted to go home, and the prince was to accompany her, but she escaped so quickly that he could not follow her. But he had caused all the steps to be spread with pitch, so that the left shoe of the maiden remained sticking in it. The prince picked it up and saw that it was of pure gold, and very small and slender. The next morning he went to her father and told him that none should be his bride save the one whose foot the golden shoe should fit. Then the 2 sisters were very glad, because they had pretty feet. The eldest went to her room to try on the shoe, and her mother stood by, but she could not get her great toe into it, for the shoe was too small. Then her mother handed her a knife and said, "Cut the toe off, for when you are queen you will never need to go by foot." So the girl chopped her toe off, squeezed her foot into the shoe, and went to the prince. Then he took her with him on his horse as his bride, and with her rode off. But they had to pass by the grave, and there sat the 2 white doves in the hazel tree, and they cried, "That is not the right bride. The slipper is much too small. Blood is flowing inside. It does not fit her at all." Then the prince looked at her foot and saw the blood flowing. And he turned his horse round and took the false bride home again, and said she was not the right one, and that the other sister must try on the shoe. So she went into her room and got her toes in, but her heel was too large. Then her mother handed her a knife and said, "Cut a piece off your heel. When you are queen, you will never need to go by foot." So the girl cut a piece off her heel and squeezed her foot into the shoe, and went to the prince, who took his bride before him on his horse and rode off. When they passed by the hazel tree, the 2 white doves sat there and cried, "Go back! Go back! There is blood in the shoe. The shoe is too small. That bride will not do." Then the prince looked at her foot and saw the blood flowing, and he turned his horse round and brought the false bride home again. "This is not the right one either," he said. "Have you no other daughter?" "No," said the man. "Only my dead wife left behind her a little nasty Cinderella. It's impossible that she can be the bride." The king's son ordered her to be sent for, but the mother said, "Oh no, she's much too dirty. I could not let her be seen." But the prince would have her fetched, and so Aschenputtal had to be called. Then she washed her face and hands very clean, and then went in and curtsied to the prince, who held out to her the golden shoe. Then she drew her left foot out of the heavy shoe she was wearing and slipped it into the golden one, which fit like a glove. And when she stood up and the prince looked in her face, he knew again the beautiful maiden that had danced with him, and he cried, "This is the right bride!" The stepmother and the 2 sisters were terrified and grew pale with anger, but he put Aschenputtal before him on his horse and rode off. And as they passed the hazel tree, the 2 white doves cried, "Cuckoo! No blood in her shoe. She is the right bride, with the prince by her side." And when they had thus cried, they came flying after and perched on Aschenputtal's shoulders, one on the right and the other on the left, and so they remained. And when her wedding with the prince was appointed to be held, the false sisters came, hoping to curry favor and to take part in the fortune. As the bride and groom went to the church, the eldest walked on the right side and the younger on the left, and the doves picked out an eye of each of them. And as they returned, the elder was on the left side and the younger on the right, and the doves picked out the other eye of each of them. And so they were condemned to go blind for the rest of their days because of their wickedness and falsehood. The end.